Today's news of Taiwan broadcast, July 31st, 2026.
This is the brief on Taiwan's latest economic and policy shifts. So, today's briefing from the TVT Morning News covers how changing market conditions and upcoming August 1st regulations are about to directly impact your wallet and, well, your daily life. First, northern Taiwan is facing a renewed brown egg shortage, causing empty shelves and price hikes over the last 2 weeks. Seriously, have you noticed those bare grocery aisles lately? It's like this recurring shortage is the canary in the coal mine for our everyday inflation anxiety. Second, well, while your grocery bills sting, your investment portfolio is hitting some severe turbulence too. Taiwan's stock market just dropped over 105 points, but the National Stabilization Fund won't intervene unless there is a complete market collapse. Meanwhile, the U.S. Fed held rates steady, but a rare 3 members dissented, wanting a rate hike. Honestly, for the global economy, those 3 rogue votes are basically a flashing check engine light, making you wonder if central banks actually have inflation under control at all. Finally, amid this market uncertainty, the government is tightening its own financial and civic rules starting tomorrow. The new Youth Loan 3.0 caps applicants at under 50 years old with an annual income under 2 million NTD to cool the housing market. Plus, Taoyuan Airport is rolling out a new tech-enforced 3-minute drop-off limit with a 1,200 NTD fine. You know, the government's message in both real estate and travel is pretty obvious here. Get in, get out, and stop holding up the line. Ultimately, whether it's the price of eggs, the stock market, or buying a house, August is bringing stricter limits and higher stakes across the board.
Welcome to The Explainer. You know, if you've ever looked at the daily news cycle and just felt totally overwhelmed by the sheer volume of chaotic, seemingly unrelated events, well, you are absolutely not alone. Today, we're going to make sense of all that noise. We're going to see exactly how the fragmented pieces of our world actually connect together into one really fascinating narrative, starting right at our local grocery store shelves and ending high up in the skies of tomorrow.
So think about it. How do global markets and local policies actually intersect in a single day? That's the exact lens we're using to look at our source material today. We are taking a journey from the micro-level changes, the stuff directly impacting your wallets and your diets, all the way up to massive global market shifts and the futuristic technologies that are literally going to redefine human transport.
Here is how we're breaking it down on the agenda today. Number 1, domestic policy and daily life. 2, food safety and public health. 3, economic shifts and markets. 4, global crises and recovery. And 5, innovations shaping our future.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, domestic policy and daily life, and how it's impacting your wallet. First up is this major legislative update affectionately dubbed the Big Wife Clause. And what's super fascinating here is how it completely flips traditional tax evasion strategies on their head. So the executive yuan recently passed this amendment to the estate and gift tax law. Essentially, if wealth is transferred to specific relatives shortly before death in an attempt to dodge estate taxes, well, that wealth is now proportionally calculated right back into the total estate tax. But here's the real kicker. The recipient of that gift is the one on the hook to actually pay the tax.
And this brilliantly highlights a crucial timeline that you definitely need to remember. 2. The law specifically targets gifts made within the 2-year window prior to death. So this effectively prevents wealthy individuals from just hastily transferring assets on their deathbeds to bypass the system. It is fundamentally changing family financial planning, basically ensuring that tax liabilities just can't be dodged right at the finish line.
Now, moving from long-term financial planning to immediate, everyday frustrations, we're seeing another direct impact on the local level, and that is the summer egg shortage. For over 2 weeks now, northern Taiwan has experienced a severe tightening in the supply of eggs, particularly brown shell eggs. And the result? Vendors are being forced to hike up their prices just to secure inventory, and consumers are staring at empty supermarket shelves, which is obviously sparking fears of a returning egg famine.
Moving right along to Section 2, food safety and public health, specifically containing the crisis.
So, following a major food safety scare involving Green and Safe's camellia oil, a really swift containment process was triggered. Step 1 was the alarming discovery of benzopyrene, which is a known carcinogen exceeding safe limits in the product. Step 2 was immediate action. Sales were completely halted and over 900 bottles from the affected production batches were yanked off the shelves and isolated in a new Taipei city warehouse. And finally, Step 3, consumer compensation. Whether the bottle is opened or unreceipted, consumers are being offered full refunds or store credit of equal value.
Let's zoom out now for Section 3, Economic Shifts and Markets, looking at macro cause and effect.
Let's see how all of this builds a really complex economic picture. On one side, you have the cautious U.S. Federal Reserve holding interest rates steady. But if you look closely, 3 decision-makers actively dissented, pushing for a rate hike. That is actually the first time we've seen a 3-person dissent since 2016, which really highlights some deep internal concerns about inflation. Now, contrast that caution with Microsoft. Driven by an absolute boom in AI and cloud computing, their stock surged an incredible 15.51%, adding nearly $450 billion to their market capitalization in a single day and lifting the entire U.S. tech sector.
But as you'll see, that global tech optimism didn't cleanly translate everywhere. The Taiwan stock market actually faced a highly volatile session, ultimately dropping 105.88 points to close at 39,933.3. So it officially broke below that critical 40,000-point psychological threshold, with major electronics and passive component stocks absolutely plummeting. Now, with such a steep local drop, a lot of investors are asking, okay, where's the National Stabilization Fund? Well, the Ministry of Finance isn't stepping in just yet because their intervention criteria haven't been met. They require a major unforeseen event that triggers a total collapse in investor confidence and severe market disorder. Currently, they view the market as experiencing normal, albeit sharp, technical corrections. So they are keeping their bullets in reserve for a true crisis.
Which brings us to Section 4, Global Crises and Recovery, focusing on resilience and reality.
Following the devastating 7.1 magnitude earthquake in Kumamoto, Japan, harrowing multi-day rescue efforts immediately got underway. On day 1, the massive tremor hit, triggering a horrific gas explosion at an Aeon mall that tragically claimed 7 lives. By day 3, self-defense forces and rescue workers were literally digging through the concrete debris of a collapsed factory in Yatsushiro with their bare hands. Sadly, on day 4, the last trapped worker was found, bringing the factory's death toll to 8.
Yet, even amidst all that rubble, humanity really shines through. During the transport shutdown caused by the quake, a Japanese stranger actually offered some stranded Taiwanese tourists a 2-hour drive to safety. Their response? "Hope everyone is safe. This is the most handsome back I've seen in my life." And in return, the grateful tourists gave him a simple pineapple cake and a heartfelt handwritten letter. It's just a profound reminder of the kindness that crosses borders in times of real need.
But as we look at global interconnectedness, we also have to acknowledge the stark geopolitical tensions shaping our reality right now. Recent Russian airstrikes claimed 13 lives in Ukraine, and in a highly alarming spillover of this conflict, a massive ballistic missile crater measuring several meters wide was discovered in farmland 100 kilometers inside the borders of Poland. It is a very stark visualization of how localized conflicts can quite literally impact the soil of neighboring nations. Finally, let's look ahead to Section 5. Innovations shaping our future, where the sky is literally the limit. Think about the sheer amount of time you could get back in your day. Imagine you need to get from central London to Heathrow Airport. In a traditional taxi, fighting through heavy city traffic, you are looking at an agonizing 1-hour drive. But utilizing a new eVTO, which is an electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicle, basically a flying taxi, that exact same journey takes just 12 minutes. Cruising at 240 kilometers per hour, you bypass the traffic entirely. No way, right? Showcased recently at the Farnborough Air Show, these machines represent the absolute next evolution in urban transport. They require no traditional runways, they are significantly quieter than the helicopters we are all used to, and they boast zero emissions output. However, the future doesn't exactly come cheap. With initial production costs hovering around $4 to $5 million per unit, these will very likely debut as luxury commuter options before scaling down to the mainstream. Still, with flight test programs officially scheduled for 2028, this reality is just around the corner.
Which brings us to the end of our journey today. From the intricate shifts in local tax clauses to the literal flying taxis that will soon dot our skylines, every fragmented piece of news is part of our rapidly evolving global narrative. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. As the world shifts around you, how are you adapting to this rapidly evolving future? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really can't wait to dive into our next topic with you. Keep learning and stay curious.
So, imagine you pull into a school drop-off line tomorrow morning. You probably assume the doors lock securely, right?
Right. You just sort of trust that the adults inside are empowered to actually protect the kids.
Exactly. You fundamentally assume the baseline rules of society function as advertised. But what happens when the system is just so paralyzed by the fear of being sued that it lets a 10-year-old violently attack 58 different students?
All while the adults just stand there and watch.
Yeah. Today, we are looking at the exact moment society's guardrails just totally snap.
Because we build our whole modern world on this foundation of implicit trust. I mean, we trust the infrastructure, the legal code, the bureaucracy to catch us when things go wrong.
But when you apply pressure to that foundation,
you start to see the structural fractures.
And that is really our mission for this deep dive. We are taking a pretty dense stack of morning news transcripts from Taiwan's TTD News, specifically from July 31st, 2026, which covers the events of the day before.
And we aren't just reading off headlines.
No, definitely not. We are looking at this really fascinating overarching theme today, basically the stress test of society. We want to explore the friction between the elaborate rules designed to protect you and the unpredictable, messy chaos of human behavior.
A single day of localized news is often like the best diagnostic tool we have. It cuts right through the theoretical models of how a society should work and shows us exactly how it is currently failing.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the institutions we rely on to keep us safe. Let's go back to that school drop-off scenario I just mentioned, because this is a real case from the education system.
Oh, man. Yeah, this was tough.
It is. There is a fifth grader in Taipei who has accumulated a staggering 109 school safety reports in just over 4 years.
To put that in perspective, that is an intervention required almost every single week of that child's educational life.
Right, and the details are severe. We are talking about 58 physical attacks on other students, 33 attacks on staff members, and 18 instances of major property damage.
Didn't a bunch of those happen just recently?
Yeah, 46 of those reports happened this year alone. One teacher actually suffered a spinal injury trying to manage the situation. But here's the piece I just cannot wrap my head around. Parents are now suing the teachers who try to physically intervene.
Unbelievable.
The Education Bureau released a statement saying they are tracking the case, but the teachers are terrified to act. How is it physically possible for a room full of adults to let this happen?
Well, it comes down to a concept called liability paralysis. Our institutions have optimized themselves to avoid civil litigation above basically all else.
So they're just scared of lawsuits.
Exactly. When a teacher makes a split-second cost-benefit analysis in a classroom, their human instinct to protect a child is competing against the legal reality where intervening means losing their career, their pension, their savings, in a massive lawsuit.
Wow.
The bureaucracy prioritizes avoiding liability over ensuring physical safety. So the result is a system that observes and documents the danger perfectly, but is entirely stripped of its ability to stop it.
It feels like we're living in a society where the security alarm is deafening, but it doesn't actually lock the doors.
That's a great way to put it.
And this blind spot, it extends far beyond the classroom. There is a horrific case in the news stack regarding a Go, or Wakey, teacher in Tucheng. This man actually had a prior criminal record.
Right, which should have disqualified him immediately.
Exactly. But to bypass the mandatory background checks required for official cram schools, he just opened a home-based class in his living room. Over the course of 3 years, he sexually assaulted and secretly filmed 12 children, ages 5 to 10, over 64 times.
It's just sickening.
And he even used visible security cameras as a cover for his crimes, claiming they were for the kids' safety.
Using the visual language of security to document abuse is just a deeply chilling manipulation. But the mechanism of his evasion is what we really need to pay attention to here. This is the danger of what we call the regulatory box.
Wait, what do you mean by the regulatory box?
So regulatory agencies only have jurisdiction over entities that step inside their legally defined boundaries. The safety nets we weave apply perfectly to a registered business with, a tax ID and a storefront.
Okay, I follow.
But the moment an individual steps 1 inch outside that defined box, by simply calling their operation a private tutoring session or a homeschool, the regulatory system goes entirely blind. It doesn't have the legal mechanism to investigate a private living room unless a crime is reported after the fact.
Wow. Well, the High Court just sentenced him to 21 years and 6 months. But the tragedy is that he operated freely for 3 years because of a technicality in how a business is defined.
Yeah, that regulatory blind spot is devastating.
And we see the systemic failure in workplace safety, too. The tragedy of the Pingtung sanitation worker really caught my eye today. A worker died after falling from the back of a moving garbage truck and hitting his head. The cause: a safety rail on the back of the truck had been removed. But here is the detail that just stops you in your tracks. 12 years ago, in this exact same town, a worker died the exact same way because a rail was removed.
Yeah, this introduces the concept of institutional amnesia.
Institutional amnesia.
Right. When a tragedy happens, rules are written in blood. A safety rail is mandated, inspections are rigorous, and everyone remembers the cost of failure. But as a decade passes, the human beings who felt that initial shock leave the organization.
So new people come in.
Exactly. New workers arrive, and the safety rail just becomes an annoyance. It gets in the way of working faster.
So someone just unbolts it for convenience.
Precisely. The system forgets the etiology of its own rules.
Yeah.
The physical guardrail is removed because the institutional memory of why it was there in the first place is just evaporated, and the cycle resets.
That is so frustrating. And looking objectively at an ongoing investigation in the corporate sector, we see another angle of this eroded trust.
Oh, the CPC Corporation story.
Yes, and we need to be clear, we are just reporting the source's claims here impartially. But according to claims made by Taiwan's opposition party, KMT legislator Tseng Ming-chung revealed that a general manager from the state-owned CPC Corporation attended an expert meeting regarding toxic waste on July 4th.
Which was the exact moment investigators were actively looking into the company for environmental violations.
Exactly. Now, the health ministry claims the manager merely reported on their internal processes and then left the room. But the optics of that timing have sparked massive allegations of shielding an offender.
Regardless of whether that specific meeting was completely innocent, it highlights how deeply the public doubts these bureaucratic firewalls.
Right, we just assume the system is rigged to protect the institution, not the public, and that paranoia is bleeding directly into personal security.
Yeah, the GPS tracker story.
It's wild. In Kaohsiung, a woman from a prominent local family, they're actually dubbed the funeral godfathers locally, took her car in to get detailed. The workers found a 15-centimeter magnetic GPS tracker powered by 5 heavy-duty batteries stuck to the inside of her rear bumper.
This raises such an important question about the democratization of surveillance. The infrastructure of society isn't just failing to protect us from top-down institutional negligence, it's struggling to protect us from each other.
I mean, 5 heavy-duty batteries, that's not a toy.
Right. 10 years ago, planting a battery-powered, long-range GPS tracker on a vehicle required, state-level intelligence resources.
Yeah.
Today, anyone with a credit card can buy military-grade stalking tools online.
That is terrifying.
The laws governing privacy are moving at the speed of a 1990s bureaucracy, while the tools to violate that privacy are iterating at the speed of Silicon Valley.
I want to challenge this narrative a bit, though. If macro institutions can't control the big things, it seems we are equally helpless at controlling our own daily choices, you know? Are we really going to blame bureaucracy for the sheer chaos we see on the streets?
What do you mean?
I mean, look at the vehicular accidents in this stack. In Miaoli, a 77-year-old woman crashed her car into a guardrail and a pole on a familiar route she drives all the time. She claims the car was regularly maintained. The vehicle flipped and caught fire, leaving her in critical condition with a brain hemorrhage.
Just a horrific daily tragedy.
And on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, in Kaohsiung, a man lent his globally limited edition blue Porsche SUV to a friend, who then inexplicably drifted it, lost control, and smashed it straight into a tech enforcement camera.
Oh, man.
Yeah, the owner was nearly in tears during the interview. Is it just me, or does it feel like everyone's internal pressure cooker is whistling right now? How much of this is just bad luck versus a societal breaking point?
It is rarely just one or the other. It's a compounding effect. When a citizen realizes the school can't protect their kid, the workplace won't protect their safety, and the economy is squeezing them dry, a psychological shift happens.
Like a baseline stress level?
Exactly. That chronic, low-grade stress trickles down into the micro-decisions of everyday life. People become frayed, distracted, and their baseline for risk tolerance actually changes. They stop trusting the social contract and act out of self-preservation or sheer exhaustion.
But what about outsourcing our judgment entirely? In Hualien, 3 college students from Tainan completely ignored physical red alert warnings at an overflowing barrier lake.
Oh, the river tracing incident.
Yeah, they went river tracing during a dangerous flood phase. When they were inevitably caught and rescued, their defense was literally, "Our GPS led us here."
Unbelievable.
They are now facing a fine of 250,000 new Taiwan dollars, which is roughly $8,000 US. How does the human brain look at an overflowing, dangerous body of water, look at a phone screen, and choose to trust the screen?
What's fascinating here is a psychological phenomenon called cognitive offloading, which leads to automation complacency.
Automation complacency.
Right. When we navigate manually, our brains are actively taking in environmental data, the height of the water, the warning signs, the weather. But when we engage a GPS, we offload that cognitive work to the machine. The brain essentially goes to sleep.
It zones out.
Completely.
Yeah.
So when the machine makes a dangerous error, the human is so disengaged from their environment that they simply follow the digital prompt into a flooded lake. They aren't choosing to be reckless. They have surrendered their situational awareness to the technology.
Okay, that makes sense for the GPS, but some of this is pure, unadulterated recklessness. In Pingtung at 2 a.m., 2 women on a scooter crashed into a guardrail. Both died. The rider's blood alcohol content was 1.25, and the passenger's was 0.45.
Just devastating.
And in Chiayi, a black car rear-ended a parked pickup truck with so much force it pushed the truck completely out of its parking space, and the driver just fled the scene.
That is the ultimate manifestation of the furry social contract we were talking about. The systemic guardrails exist. We have laws against drunk driving, laws against hit and runs, but in the moment, the human element just shatters the rule book.
Now, sometimes a tiny human error in a routine job cascades into a massive failure. Also in Chiayi, a 71-year-old worker was operating a crane to install a sign. The crane brushed against high-voltage wires.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the resulting explosion severely burned the worker and instantly cut power to nearly 3,000 households. One miscalculation, and the grid goes down for an entire neighborhood. And people's patience for these disruptions is basically non-existent right now. Tempers are violently snapping in public.
Well, the symptoms of societal stress almost always show up first in public spaces.
You can see it. In a Kaohsiung park, a woman just walked up and slapped a 3-year-old boy in the face. When brought to court, she tried to claim she was merely disciplining him, despite having zero relation to the child. The judge handed down a 5-month prison sentence without the option of a fine. And then, at Taipei Main Station, a recently fired sign holder had a complete public meltdown, throwing rocks and water bottles at random passersby before the police took him into custody.
When an individual's personal infrastructure collapses, like losing a job or facing unmanageable economic pressure, the resulting explosion rarely happens in a vacuum. It hits whoever happens to be standing nearby. The physical public square just becomes the dumping ground for private psychological collapse.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We've spent all this time analyzing the fragility of human systems and human psychology, but the actual physical ground beneath our feet is proving just as volatile.
The physical environment is the ultimate stress test.
Definitely. Our source stack covers day 4 of the aftermath of the 7.1 magnitude Kumamoto earthquake in Japan. And the details force you to confront how fragile our built environment really is.
Yeah, those stories are harrowing.
At the Aeon Mall in Kumamoto, authorities suspect a gas leak caused a massive explosion that sent debris flying 200 meters. 7 employees died. And at the Yatsushiro paper factory, a massive chimney collapsed and trapped 11 people. 8 died. Rescuers just found the last missing person in the rubble on July 30th.
We view a concrete mall or a steel factory as permanent fixtures, but a kinetic event like a 7.1 magnitude tremor exposes that our infrastructure is essentially just a rigid shell holding back immense natural forces. And this raises an incredibly urgent point about how we prepare for these events.
Which brings us to the controversy going on in Taiwan right now. Members of the Control Yuan, Taiwan's top watchdog agency, came out and heavily criticized the National Science and Technology Council.
Right, about their disaster simulations.
Yes, the council runs active fault disaster simulations to help the government prepare for earthquakes. But the watchdog stated that these simulations lack proper mitigation assessments and are dangerously misleading real-world preparations.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are talking about the danger of model collapse.
Model collapse. Explain how a computer simulation causes a building to fall.
Okay, so city planners use these government simulations to decide where to zone neighborhoods, how thick to pour the concrete, and where to place emergency shelters. They trust the math.
Right, you assume the experts did the math right.
But if the input data in the simulation relies on outdated geological assumptions, the model outputs a false map of safety. The government then builds physical, real-world guardrails based on a digital fantasy.
Oh, I see.
So when the actual tremor hits, the concrete fails because the math was wrong by an inch, leading to structural collapse by a mile.
And it isn't just natural tremors threatening our physical spaces. It's geopolitical ones, too. The news stack details a massive Russian airstrike on Ukraine that left 13 people dead. But the shockwave couldn't be contained by a border. A suspected Russian ballistic missile landed in Polish farmland, creating a massive crater 100 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border.
Violence, like an earthquake, rarely respects the artificial lines we draw on maps. The kinetic energy just spills over.
But amidst all this physical and structural failure, there is this incredible counter-narrative of human resilience. While the buildings in Kumamoto fell, the Taiwanese private and official sectors immediately mobilized, flying supplies directly to Japan.
That cross-border warmth is amazing to see.
Yeah. Taiwanese students studying in Japan gathered to sing publicly to express gratitude for the historical relationship between the two places. And there's this profound story of a Japanese local who saw stranded Taiwanese tourists unable to use the earthquake-damaged transit system and simply drove them 2 hours to a functioning station.
It is the ultimate paradox of society. What's fascinating here is that while our physical infrastructure, our malls, our factories, our computer simulations is highly fragile, our social infrastructure and human empathy often remain incredibly robust in a crisis.
That's a really hopeful way to look at it.
When the concrete cracks, it is often just an individual choosing to help a stranger that holds the fabric of the community together.
So, if the institutions are blind, the people are stressed, and the ground is shaking, how is society trying to patch these holes?
Through our wallets and our laws, mostly.
Right, and occasionally literal science fiction. Let's look at the economic reality first, because that seems to be the root of a lot of this friction.
Economics is the water we all swim in. When the temperature changes, everyone feels it.
Absolutely. The Changhua County Council speaker sparked a massive viral debate by telling a group of high schoolers that a monthly salary of 50,000 new Taiwan dollars, which is about 1,500 US dollars, simply isn't enough to survive on anymore.
I saw that. The reaction was intense.
Netizens immediately flooded the comments, joking darkly that reincarnation is better than college. Meanwhile, northern Taiwan is facing a summer egg shortage, specifically red shell eggs driving prices up at the grocery store.
It's the daily essentials that really hurt.
And the Taiwanese stock market is wildly volatile right now, dropping 105 points in a session, but the National Stabilization Fund is refusing to intervene, claiming they need to keep their powder dry.
You are seeing a profound disconnect between the macroeconomy and the lived reality of citizens.
Even globally, the U.S. Federal Reserve decided to keep interest rates unchanged, but 3 members of the committee formally dissented. That is a historic rift in consensus we haven't seen since 2016.
That's a huge deal in the financial world.
But if you are in the AI business, you exist in a completely different reality. U.S. tech stocks, specifically Microsoft, surged by $450 billion in market capitalization in a single day, fueled purely by AI optimism.
The divergence there is staggering.
Back down on Earth, regular people are just trying to cook dinner safely. YFY Biotech had to recall its camellia oil. They marketed it as locally sourced, but their outsourced supplier allegedly used seeds from China, resulting in cooking oil tainted with excessive amounts of benzopyrene, which is a known carcinogen.
So we have this toxic cocktail of wage stagnation, food safety failures, and fractured political consensus. And the bureaucracy's only mechanism to respond to this is to write more rules.
And August 1st brings an absolute barrage of them. But I don't want to just list them off. I want to understand how they are supposed to fix things. For example, the new first wife clause for estate taxes takes effect. What exactly is the mechanism here?
Right. So the first wife clause is a colloquial term for a legal mechanism designed to standardize messy human relationships upon death.
Okay.
Essentially, it allows a surviving spouse to exercise a constitutional right to claim a specific remaining portion of the couple's shared property before the government calculates the total taxable estate. By clearly defining this spousal deduction, the state is trying to prevent families from collapsing into chaotic legal battles over inheritance, just reducing the friction in the legal system overall.
That makes sense, standardizing the chaos. But what about the new Youth Mortgage 3.0? This policy is actively tightening age and income rules for young people trying to buy homes. I thought the whole point of a youth mortgage was to help young people. Why make it harder?
Because of unintended consequences. The previous versions of the youth mortgage had rules that were just way too loose. Instead of helping young people buy their first home, wealthy investors began using young adults as proxies.
Wait, really? How does that work?
They would use a young person's name to secure the favorable loan terms, flip the house, and split the profit. It overheated the housing market and created a speculation bubble. The bureaucracy is now tightening the rules to patch the loophole that human greed just immediately found.
That is wild. And there are so many other patches coming on August 1st. The Mental Health Act now requires a judge, not just a board, to mandate hospitalization. Taiwan Airport implemented 3-minute tech enforced drop-off limits. Atropine eye drops for child myopia are now covered by NHI. A prostate cancer screening program is coming. Student loan repayment terms are easing.
It's just a flood of regulatory patches.
And sometimes the bureaucracy literally has to legislate where you sit down. The TRA EMU 3000 trains are officially banning unreserved seating on weekends. The crowds were getting so chaotic and the friction between passengers so high that the system simply removed the freedom to choose your seat just to stop the conflicts.
Wow.
But while the government is busy trying to patch the existing system, the market is busy trying to build an escape hatch for the elite.
This is where we see the ultimate divergence of reality.
At the Farnborough Air Show in the UK, they were showcasing eVTOLs, electric vertical takeoff and landing flying taxis. They look like massive, sleek drones. The pitch is that they can take you from central London to Heathrow Airport in 12 minutes flat, entirely bypassing the traffic.
That sounds amazing until you hear the price.
Exactly. The catch is they cost between $4 and $5 million each. So while the average person is dealing with expensive eggs, tight mortgages, and toxic cooking oil, the tech industry solution is a literal flying taxi for the ultra-rich.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the most honest representation of where society is heading. These flying taxis are the physical manifestation of trying to fly over the friction.
Literally fly over it.
Right. If you have enough capital, you don't have to deal with the 77-year-old crashing into a guardrail, or the hit and runs, or the crumbling infrastructure, or the angry crowds on the train. You simply buy a $5 million drone and build a new layer of infrastructure in the sky. It is society's frantic attempt to out-innovate the chaos rather than fixing the rot at the ground level.
So what does this all mean? We rely on these systems, the civil liability laws, the concrete disaster simulations, the economic safety nets to keep the chaos at bay. But as we've seen from just a single cross-section of daily news, those guardrails are under immense compounding pressure. So to you listening, take a look at your own daily routines tomorrow. Which of your personal guardrails are actually solid, and which ones are just an illusion of control?
And we have to recognize that this illusion is only going to become more complex. We've seen how fragile human systems are today, paralyzed by legal liability, cognitive offloading, and just raw emotion.
Yeah.
As we rush to integrate artificial intelligence into our legal, financial, and safety system to fix these human errors, we have to ask a really tough question. Will AI finally enforce the perfect guardrails we've been looking for, or will it just scale our chaos faster than we can even comprehend?
Because right now, society isn't a clean, engineered blueprint with a binary answer. It is a murky, chaotic, real-time stress test, and we are all living right in the middle of it.